Producers like Lawrence, my God, they just give me hello, everybody. Actually. Hey folks, welcome back. This is Amped Up with Cliff Schecter. I am, last I checked, Cliff Schecter. I am here along with the always more talented, Emmy-winning David Shuster, former host at MSNBC.
Hello, and very cold David Shuster, because we have it's not going to reach 20 degrees here in Connecticut until like next week, and we've got 23 inches of snow, and I'm in the basement and the heating doesn't work so well. So I'm a little chilly.
Yeah, I'm looking right now because
first world problems.
I was going to say to people, I mean, sometimes I come in casually. It is what it is. I mean, I think the sweater's relatively nice, but I got the hat on, and that's because I have to wear one of the beanies around to keep my ears warm, because it was like 4 degrees here, and you don't want to see what my hair looks like right now. So I thought I either have to keep the beanie on or wear this, and I decided
the beanie looks good on you, Cliff. You're a handsome beanie man. By the way, I gotta say, Cliff, what is today? Today's Wednesday, right? So this is now Wednesday. 5 days since the shooting of Alex Pretti, and finally, after 5 days, the Department of Homeland Security has finally issued an official statement that Alex Pretti, the man who was shot and killed by ICE agents in Minneapolis, that he was not a domestic terrorist. 5 days it took him. But
did they figure that out from the fact that he was helping a woman they were pepper spraying, by the fact that they all tackled him, by the fact that they shot him 10 times, by the fact that Greg Bovino honestly looks like the rebirth of Himmler with a bad haircut? I
heard that Bovino, and maybe this goes for Stephen Miller, that he goes by the pronoun he and Himmler. It's just something like
he Himmler, is that his? That was well.
I know. That was good. So that one's
also from what I hear in his stature, he also goes by the pronoun Willow. So you can do. I'm sorry.
Well,
I'm not a tall guy, but that guy is really short. So
this is what's got me going today, and that is okay. They're changing the tone. Fine, they're changing the tone, but they're not really. Other than taking Bovino out of Minneapolis, they're not really changing the. And I guess the agent who was involved in the shooting, or 2 of them have been suspended, but it's not like they're bringing criminal charges against these agents. They're not removing the 2,000 BPB Border Patrol and 1,000 ICE agents who are there. They still have a very heavy-handed presence. They're still going door to door. And while they change the tone and acknowledge that maybe the agents didn't follow protocol, well, now you have Stephen Miller blaming Kristi Noem blaming Stephen Miller, Donald Trump blaming Greg Bovino. I mean, everybody's pointing the finger at somebody else, as opposed to
David. And
I mean, if you had any integrity, right? We've seen this, lessons in leadership. When something goes wrong, you take responsibility. This White House, adding insult to injury, will not take responsibility for anything.
But I think the key part, in the analysis that is missing, with no disrespect to you, because you're right on, is that you're giving them too much credit in that. Of course, like the key part's missing, that any of them would take, responsibility, because that's what leaders do. None of them were picked because they are those types of people. I mean, they were purposely picked because they shot a dog in the face. They had to, settle a sexual harassment case in Hegseth's, case. His mom wrote about how she hated him for abusing women. I mean, every one of these people were people that couldn't be hired in any kind of a regular job in America if one knew their resume. They're hired particularly because they aren't leaders, because they are cowards. So they're willing to do what Trump wants. They're incompetent.
Although I would say, Cliff, that just in terms of politics, and I give them some political credit for winning the last election, I would have thought that a couple of weeks ago, when it became very clear that their rush to describe Renee Good as a domestic terrorist that was blowing up in their face when the video emerged, that the next time this happened, they would wait and say, terrible incident in Minneapolis. We're sorry that somebody died. We're sorry that ICE agents had to be involved. We're going to wait until we find out all the facts. Instead, again, there was this horrible rush to sort of frame the narrative, to smear the victim, even before anybody knew anything about what was going on.
Worse.
And to me, that gets right to, they care more about the narrative and about their talking points than they actually care or have ever cared about the truth.
Seeing innocent people murdered on our streets is horrific. Seeing innocent people murdered and then having the people that gleefully did it come out and then insult their character. And it's just, I think it's so sickening. It is so just reprehensible. And so they don't get it. Trump has a 34% approval rating now.
Well, and I'm so glad you mentioned
see those numbers, but I'll just let you say quickly, I don't think and I want to get Zuri in here, Zuri Stevens, who's here with us. I don't think those people that surround him can think of what's the smart thing to do politically any more than he can, because they are all ruled by their antisocial personality disorder behavior. They have to get their insults in. They have to get their nastiness in.
I'm glad you mentioned the Reuters Ipsos poll, because as you pointed out, Donald Trump's approval rating is now the worst ever. But the other number that's astounding is that he's now losing on the issue of immigration, approve, disapprove, but something like 52% disapprove, 38% approve. This was his signature issue. When it comes to the deportations, the number goes up to 58% disapprove of the deportation. So he's underwater on immigration by like 14 points.
Yeah. So, if you were one of, let's say, and I'm not going to let this go, those 7 jack in the boxes, Democrats in the House who thought it was okay. Swazi's already trying to apologize and beg his way out of it. But if you're one of those 7 who, after they had murdered Renee Good by shooting her in the head on the 3rd shot and killing her and denying her medical service, putting people in concentration camps for being brown, they kidnapped a 5-year-old. If after all of that, you 7 thought it was okay to vote to fund our fucking Gestapo in this country at that point, to me, you're bereft of the qualities one needs in office. There's no forgiving you. I don't care what the hell you do now. In any case, I that's where I stand on it. You couldn't. There's people that can make mistakes. There's people that can try to do this, and I forgive. But the 7 that did that, it was so utterly ridiculously stupid. Like, do you understand how unpopular this stuff is? I mean, they can turn Benghazi into something. We just watched a murder on live TV, and you guys want to just keep funding them. In any case, we're making Zuri wait too long here, and I apologize.
Let's bring in Zuri.
Don't worry, happy to be here.
Zuri Stevens is like in the true sense of the word, a writer, because there are people that write, and then there are writers. I don't mean to sound like a jerk, but maybe I'm one of the people that writes. Who knows? But Zuri has the way with words and the arguments that she makes, and she's a terrific writer on Substack. Of course, I should have in front of me the exact name of your Substack. We need a black woman in charge. There we go.
Exactly.
I think we all kind of hoped that we would have a black woman in charge right now if things had gone a little differently. But no, sadly, we got an infantile diaper wearing schmuck in charge, and we've had to
exactly.
And Zuri, before I want to ask you about some of the columns you've written in your amazing Substack over the last couple of years. But before we get that, I want to give you a chance to sort of weigh in. What's been your reaction to both the shooting of Alex Pretti, the killing of Renee Good a couple of weeks ago, the way the Trump administration has handled this, and also, frankly, the way politically it seems like the public is responding?
It's been absolutely shocking. I have been shocked. Absolutely shocked. And, I have sort of interacted a little less on Substack because this was so shocking to me and just really hit me to my core. And especially with Alex Pretti, because he reminds me of friends that I have that stand up and defend me in the face of racism or, xenophobia. So he looks like that type of person. And I feel that I know this person. So watching him get murdered or assassinated in that fashion took my breath away. I mean, I did have, it took me a while just to get back, into a normal mental state. So this, what's going on is arbitrary shootings, stuff that you would see happening in other countries that we call quote unquote third world countries or dictatorships. So for me, it's shocking to see this on American soil, to see citizens getting arrested, getting shot, getting killed. And what you mentioned, David, basically these narratives out there calling these poor victims domestic terrorists. It's absolutely shocking. So from my perspective, it's good that his ratings are going down. We can't sit here and accept this we can't treat people, we can't treat citizens or anybody for that matter in this way. And you know, to add insult to injury, when people are hurting because they've lost a loved one, you know, people coming out. And if you look at Kristi Noem's statement that she made, you know, basically she was reading, they had the exact same statement. So all of them were reading the same statement. So I majored in communication.
So they can't even take the time to like come up with anything that sounds slightly heartfelt. Yeah.
Exactly. No emotion, nothing. It's inauthentic. They're reading like robots from this piece of paper. And for me, I was like, that's like utter disrespect. That's basically even desecrating your victim a second time over, because you did not take the time to think of that poor mother that has lost a son, or father who's lost a son, or, you know, or child who's lost a mother in the case of Renee Good. So yes.
And by the way, the reporting on those statements, both from Bovino and Kristi Noem, was that they were essentially dictated to them by Stephen Miller, who in his rush, before knowing anything, he's sitting there in the White House, immediately puts out a tweet saying that this was a terrorist who carried out the shooting, and then dictates to Kristi Noem and Greg Bovino, here's what you got to say. Now, shame on them for buying this crap without anybody really knowing what's going on. But your view of Stephen Miller and his role in the White House, I mean, I made the joke earlier about that. He goes by the pronoun he, Himmler. But, I mean, there's some serious racism and bigotry in Stephen Miller, isn't there?
Yeah, it's absolutely horrendous. And I sometimes sort of look at these tweets, and, you know, I've just stopped getting triggered by this stuff. I've you know, just to protect my mental health. You can no longer look at that stuff. You know, you have to wear your armor on when you get to X and start reading those tweets. Because I read the tweets because I want to be informed for the stuff that I write. But I have this armor on, and I'm just like, this guy's totally crazy, seriously racist. And
I can only take a couple of them at a time. Is how I do it. I don't know if you have a way of doing it. If I look at a few at a time, I can do it. Otherwise, I just lose my. Yeah, go ahead.
I just have this funny feeling that this is a game that's going on, and they're trying to see who's going to say the worst, most racist, most xenophobic crap. That's what they're up to. And so I think it's a bidding match, actually. That's what I've sort of, you know, any single time I see something horrible coming from J.D. Vance, I'm like, so is Stephen Miller going to write something even more, you know, outrageous? And so that's the way I'm sort of seeing this type of thing right now. The cruelty is at a level at which these people are trying to outbid each other in the level of cruelty and violence that they can actually exert on the American people.
I mean, they're bad guys in movies. You know what I mean? Like I think of the movie Goodfellas, where at one point they're describing the Robert De Niro character, and they're trying to make it like, you know, he was Jimmy Conway, was the real deal. And he's like, you know, and he says he would always root for all the bad guys in movies. That's how these guys feel. They're the ones sitting there, and the people that are murdering innocent people, blowing them up, starving them, whatever. They're like, you know, because I mean, they're again, like I mean, I will not allow mental illness to be used as an excuse, because you could probably say Idi Amin or Adolf Hitler or any number of people, you know, but like the people there are lacking some very basic personality ingredients, and that's why they were picked, you know. And so with Stephen Miller's case, I think, again, you know, and so to get back to that point, I mean, my reading of all this, because again, I think people have thrown, you know, this theory and that theory, and I think all, you know, they want to, clearly the cruelty is part of it. They love it. They want to hurt people. They want to take things from their enemies. They want retribution, especially if you're Trump and Minnesota didn't vote for him and all of that stuff. But again, to me, the most obvious piece here, and this is an important topic to talk with you about because we go through voter suppression every election, the most important piece always was, if you know Trump, he's about personally becoming rich and personally becoming powerful, and everybody's either an enabler or an obstacle to that. And he doesn't care what he does to the obstacle. So, I mean, the fact that Pam Bondi openly, and in this quaint time in our country, like, you know, a couple of years ago, that would have been an arrestable offense. Someone literally would have been sent to prison because it's breaking the law. Said that, oh, can we have your voter rolls? And again, it just proves like that is because they already are suppressing the black vote. I live in Cincinnati, in Ohio. One of the ways they've been able to take this state by as large margins as they have is they suppress the voting. Of course, a key group are black voters who they probably cut our vote by at least a couple percentage points here. But now they're taking it to that next level. And I feel like, and I want you to comment, I'm sorry, and there's been a long build up to this, but I am, because we need to be talking about this. He does everything we don't expect him to do on the day of the elections or other days. It is inevitable to me. that there will be polling places where he is going to send members of ICE or other radicalized police forces, and they're going to largely, I'm sure, be black, but maybe some other ones too, to shut them down and to say there's a terrorist threat and arrest people.
Yeah,
and so, because they can do that. Let's say they did in the 3 C's, as we call them here in Ohio. I think Sherrod Brown would win absolutely right now. He performed. He only lost by 3 points in their big election year. But if they shut down Cincinnati, where I live, that changes everything. I mean, how can people of color like prepare for this, or do what's necessary to vote, but also be safe? And that's a big question. So.
And that's one thing that I always bring into my pieces, because I think they're people of color. But the thing is, we have been doing so much for so long, and what we need now are people like you, white people, and other people to join us, and for all of us to really realize that, what this administration is doing, they're doing it maybe to black and brown people, and now they shot 2 white people. But this is something, it's just going to get worse and worse. And the thing is, we need to come together. All of us need to come together to fight against stuff like voter suppression, to fight against the stuff like ICE, which is what, of course, Alex Pretti was doing and Rennie Good was doing. The thing is, we need to come together. We can no longer do this along racial lines, because there is voter suppression all over this country. Even in the last presidential election, there was voter suppression. When someone says, "Hey, there's a bomb there,"
there is. It's been built in forever, and especially since the Shelby case. If you're in a state controlled by Republicans, which are a lot of big states, Texas, Florida, they have elections we've lost by 1 or 2 points. I don't know that you can definitively say if everybody who'd gone to the election, gone out that day to vote how they intended to, that we would have lost, because they at least suppress a couple % of the vote that way.
Of course. So I think what we have now, what we're seeing now, is that all of us have to be outraged. It can't just be black people that are outraged or African Americans that are outraged. It needs to be every single one of us. That's the only way that we keep this democracy. Because my feeling is, for so many years, I've heard people say, "Oh, that's a black person problem. They can solve it. And let them get their people into office." But then you can't get your people into office because there's been voter suppression. So it's just like this chicken and egg thing keeps them, happening all the time. So I think what we need to have is a majority of people that are outraged by these things, a majority of people that feel concerned, not just black people. I think that's what needs to happen. And that's the way that we solve this issue, is because we're beginning to see, if we just let things go, the US is going to be one of the biggest authoritarian states in the world. If we let things go, we're going to all have to get up and fight. And I talk about this in my pieces. Yes, it's a scary time. Yes, white people don't want to go out there and get shot. But in this moment, we are all going to have to stand up, and we're all going to have to make our voices heard and talk about these things and fight for these things. I think this is where we are at this point in time.
And somebody who fought and said no to the Trump administration in pretty dramatic fashion, although it was sort of buried in the weeds, was the Secretary of State of Minnesota. And that there was the Attorney General Pam Bondi, who said to the state of Minnesota and the Minnesota officials, "Oh, we'll pull out all the ICE agents and Border Patrol out of Minnesota as long as you give us your voter rolls and give us your information about who's on SNAP benefits." And for people who don't know, I mean,
Social
voter
Security
rolls,
numbers, they wanted the personal stuff. Yeah.
Once you have even partial Social Security numbers, you can cross-reference that with the other government databases that they already control. And then it makes suppression, intimidation that much easier for the federal government to say to communities of color, to Latinos, to other minorities, "Hey, you better not show up to vote, because otherwise we're going to go after you for whatever." And good for the Secretary of State to say, no, the answer is no. But on top of that, I wanted to say, to the other point, Zuri, and that is, in terms of all of us standing up and organizing and working together, whether you're black or white or whatever, has it given you any comfort to see the way that so many people in Minneapolis now, in sub-zero temperatures, -10, have organized and figured out ways to alert each other and to help one another, whether it's mental health or physical health or food or money? I mean, it has been remarkable to me, the reaction in Minnesota.
So I'll tell you, David, this already started after George Floyd. When George Floyd was murdered, I felt a sense of comfort that there were so many people, not just in Minneapolis, but across the US and across the world. And honestly, in all the years that I've been writing about racism, I had a sense of relief. I have mixed race kids, and I've asked myself over and over, was this a good idea sometimes, and in 2020, I had that sense of relief saying people will stand up for them. I felt this solidarity with the world. What's happening in Minneapolis right now, yes, gives me comfort, but people are sub-zero temperatures out there still fighting. That is excellent. We just need to see it in more places. We need to see it in more places, but this is a really good sign of everybody coming together. And it does give me that comfort, to answer your question. It does, of course it does. And even in my style of writing these days, I'm sort of less, I don't know if you've read some of my stuff, but some of my earlier stuff when I was just so outraged by what was going on. But my latest stuff, I think it comes across, this compassion that I feel towards the people that are out there and standing up and saying, I'm not a racist. I've never been a racist. And I want to fight for this world where, we're all equal. So yes, it does give me comfort. It just needs to be in more places.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I think we saw some of it in Los Angeles, Minnesota, Minneapolis has been the worst that we've seen in terms of an assault and that in that response. The way I've tried to look at it is because you get these people on kind of both ends, and some are like, and there's some of them are out there, and I'll admit this frustrates me, where they're like, we've accomplished nothing. All they're doing is just trading Bovino for Homan and blah, 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 blah. And then you get people on the other side who, are like, look at what we did. We've won everything, and I think having nuance and understanding that if we aren't excited about, or at least don't celebrate the battles we win, getting Bovino out of there was a win. Getting the fact that Kristi Noem, maybe her head may be on the chopping block, not literally, and I have no comment on that. Maybe it is a victory, but also again, those seven calcified wimps in the House on the Democratic side that voted to fund this after, who are apologizing and backing away. And then there were some senators who are questionable. And again, I still need them to do more, but the fact that they all united around it. So, and I'm missing like one or two, there are some other things too, but a number of things happen where you can say, okay, they also look, the Secretary of State rejecting. I know that, in a perfect world, we wouldn't be celebrating that. That would just be normal. But these are all a big deal because this is for the whole game here, and making sure people can vote. So I say that, but then I also try to say to people, of course, it's not like, all right, let's go have margaritas. It's over. I mean, there's so much more to do, but I think Trump's numbers falling into 34% and their negatives at ICE going to 63% was the other thing I mentioned in this note that I put out there when I was mentioning some of the good things that we should, and I feel like because you can get exhausted, you can get weary from this. You can get to a point where you can't do it anymore, where you burn out. Like take the victories, be excited, and the old Robert Frost poem, I think, right? We've got many miles to go before we sleep is a way of looking at it. It's still a long way to go.
No, I totally agree because that's what keeps me going. I just couldn't say, oh, that's not enough. Oh my gosh. No, this keeps me going. And, there are little wins and they're small wins, but they're still wins, and so I think that we should, take note of that and continue, but we definitely shouldn't, think it's nothing from my perspective. Things are shifting as well. I'm still a little bit cautious though, because I'm thinking Trump is seeing that he's going down in the polls. And so, maybe it's just another big manipulation that, he's up to, to get us to think that he's actually concerned about what's going on in Minneapolis. But at the same time, it's the first time that we've actually exerted pressure and seen some type of reaction coming out of this president. So it's a good thing.
Yeah, and I almost sort of wonder, Cliff, if the political reaction we're seeing more Republicans step forward is because they see Donald Trump essentially changing the tone and saying, yes, it didn't really, didn't work out the way we want. And so now Republicans feel emboldened and say, we can criticize this too. And we can go after Noem and we can go after Bovino because you've already essentially sidelined them. So they feel like they have some liberty to sort of go after them politically. But I want to ask a little bit.
Along the lines of what you said, I'll just say quickly so folks know if they don't know. And again, we need more. I'm not saying, oh my God, it's great. But at least 2 Senate Republicans called on Noem to step down, Murkowski and Tillis. You also had, as you were pointing out, David, a number of folks. The big one another one that I'd mentioned and I was trying to remember is somebody who's considered one of the top candidates for governor in Minnesota, not only a Republican, not only dropped out of the race, but dropped out of the race, said, I can't, I don't support this. This is ridiculous. It's, and used some pretty strong language and said, I don't even know if I can consider myself a Republican anymore, essentially, after seeing this. So, I mean, everything, when people say that, it makes people that are kind of thinking about it rethink it more. In case, go ahead. I think that's important.
Well, I wanted to, Zuri, I want to ask you about your Substack, Diary of a Black Woman in a White World. I was reading some of the stuff you wrote, I guess it was a little more than a year ago. And it was sort of very powerful because you were going through a very difficult couple of years. And I just want to sort of set that up, and you tell us as much or as little as you want, but tell us what the last couple of years have been like for you and how that has framed your thinking and your points of view now.
Yeah, I mentioned, so I started writing a lot publicly, just about being a Black woman in a white world in 2020. And the trigger was really what happened to George Floyd, because he very much resembled my brother. And I just, through looking at those scenes, just imagined if my brother was in such a difficult situation. And so I started writing about my different experiences, got a lot of pushback online. Of course, people said that can't be true. But I think over time, a lot of my readership has evolved and really began to see, when I talk about white privilege, I don't talk about it in a way to piss people off. That's not why I talk about it. I talk about it because it does exist, and it
what
does
are you
exist.
talking about? We don't have any privilege. I'm just
it exists in the world. So,
seriously,
I think what's really interesting in all of this is when I started writing this, my kids were sort of like teenagers and stuff like that. And last year when Kamala lost, I sort of said, I'm stopping this. I'm stopping the Substack. I can't do this anymore. And my kids basically said, you can't do that. Just imagine some kid that lives in a racist household somewhere in Tennessee. If you stop this Substack, this kid doesn't get to read about these experiences. So I actually started continuing to write about, my experiences, my life. And then I moved into We Need a Black Woman in Charge, which really talks about the experiences of Black women. And I see this from a very different angle. You must have heard about what happened yesterday to Ilhan Omar in her speech, and she got attacked with this guy with a syringe and stuff like that.
It was
Trump,
soon after Trump was attacking her too during his speech.
Yeah, he starts attacking her and said it's a setup, and all these people, it's now in Polymarket, and they're saying, is this a setup? And people are actually betting on this. And, I looked at the photos this morning of her. Basically, she gets attacked, but she's actually trying to go after this guy. And it just tells me a lot about the resilience that we have as Black women and how we fight. And we have this, I think we just have this inclination to fight because we don't want people to feel neglected the way that we felt in our lives and marginalized and stuff like that. So, I would say that I do have quite a bit of courage today as I speak, just, what you were just talking about, what's happening in Minnesota, people standing up, people like you standing up. And, that gives me a lot of courage. And I have a lot of, hope for the world. But I would say, 2 years, but I'm sort of on the up because I'm sort of seeing how people are realizing that, yes, racism does exist. And there are people, there are white people in the world that don't like this, that don't want this, that are not racist, which is very different from maybe where I started, where I'm like, well, everybody is, all white people are, and sort of moving more into seeing, the people that are and the people that aren't. There's a huge difference between the Stephen Millers of the world, for example, and, some other characters. I would even say maybe the Gavin Newsoms. He's not my favorite, but, but there are differences. So beginning to really see the personalities and the characters within people.
Well, one of the things that sort of jumped out at me is, Cliff Schecter and David Shuster, as characters, we don't have to deal with the constant people feeling threatened by you because of the color of your skin. And you wrote so sort of eloquently about that. And, Cliff and I have not largely had to deal with bosses who felt threatened by us or threatened by our skin color, but that's an experience that you have to deal with every day.
Yeah, it's been a tough experience. And, I was talking to just a few people in Substack the other day. My last sort of role, I basically, the person basically just told me that I was this threat. And she said, well, you're good and you're Black and you're a woman, so you're going to steal my job. So I, and people
Somebody said that to you?
Yeah, and I've heard that several times.
You should have just been like, yeah, I am, because I'm better than you. So I'm sorry.
But I don't even necessarily think that I'm better.
No, I know.
very passionate about the work that I was doing, you know, saving kids in Africa. That was where my heart was. But then the entire, all that jealousy and all that stuff came in, and people feeling that I was a threat. So yeah, there have been some pretty difficult times, but it's really interesting because the other day I sort of came into Substack, and Substack is this place where I sort of come into it. Yes, there are trolls, but it's a space where I feel seen and where I can fully be myself. And so it's sort of become therapeutic in many, many ways, you know, you know, I have had experiences where I've sort of thought to myself, so what do I do? You know, like, what do I do? I can't change who I am. I can't change what I look like. What do I do? I've tried to dummy myself down a little bit, you know, and sort of like, don't talk, don't say anything, just be, but I can't. It's in my nature to speak my mind, not in a controversial, aggressive way, but it's just who I am. So yes, it has been tough. You probably have heard about the over 600,000 African-American women that have lost their jobs ever since Trump got back to the White House. So I have a lot of friends that are in those 600,000. So what do? You know,
there's the healthcare stat too, and there's SNAP, and I mean, it's just
the maternal mortality. There's a ton of stuff, but you know, at the same time, you know, if you ask me if I sort of like went to heaven and came back and relived, you know, what would I choose to be? I'd still choose to be a Black woman. I wouldn't want to not be a Black woman. So despite all of the adversity, you know, I'm still happy the way I look and who I am, and yeah, you know, going to continue just fighting for what is right.
Well, and on that point, I just want to say, I mean, and we'll get into more of it, but it takes an incredible amount of courage, I think, for you to be able to put yourself out there and talk about some of these experiences, because, you know, we don't have to sort of talk about, you know, challenges of sort of being a white man on a regular basis. And I wouldn't even think to write about that. But I just salute your courage and your honesty, and your writing is spectacular, as Cliff points out. And I think everybody, Black, white, Jewish, Christian, whatever your background, everybody is served by reading your words. And so I just want to put that out there. But anyway, Cliff.
Thank you so much. But I'll say one thing, you know, we have this joke in my family because my husband's white. So, you know, sometimes we have this really funny joke when we need to do something. He sort of says, do you think my white privilege will help there? And I'm like, yeah, go ahead. So he said, and my kids sort of say to him, Dad, we think you should do this. We think your privilege is going to help. So we make it sort of like a joke in our family. But but I know he's like, I never have to write about why I'm a white person. And, you know, so yeah, just pick it up.
I think you have to, again, we all are doing such serious stuff that you have to kind of lighten it up with things like, I mean, I'm not comparing exactly to your situation, but you know, and my wife and I are both as lapsed religiously, I think, as you can be. But my background is my family was Jewish and her family was Protestant. So of course there's WASP and Jew jokes flying around my house, even from my kids all the time. And it's always done in a friendly, you know, in a kind-hearted way. But you know, it's you have to do that for your sanity. So, you know, bigger picture, what is it that you would say you think we need to do, you know, at the moment? How can we best educate people? I mean, I think they're seeing a lot of the racism out there. It's obvious in who these guys are grabbing. I mean, white replacement theory is about getting voting power, and it's about attacking Black and brown people. I mean, you know, like it's about, they go hand in hand. They hate you because of who you are, and they hate you because of how you vote. So, what do you think is the best way to galvanize, let's say, white folks who may have no idea? I mean, I have a hard time, you know, I know it exists, that white people who believe there wasn't any racism. That kind of boggles my mind. But okay, how would you speak to them? How would you convince them? How would you, you know, change their minds?
Well, you know, I think when somebody is racist towards somebody like myself, you know, the feeling that you have is very similar to if somebody is anti-Semitic or somebody is doesn't like men. You know, it's just that same feeling. So I think everybody in the world, many people at least, have had that experience of feeling excluded or not wanted or judged just based on either the color of their skin, their religion, or, you know, their level of ability, what have you. So for me, the way I've done it is just write about my experiences and just be very consistent in writing about my experiences and recounting stuff that happens to me in a very authentic way, and sort of add in, how does it make me feel? The emotional side to things. And I think that's what I do in my writing, is this is how it makes me feel when I go into a restaurant and I get seated by the toilet, and
you can communicate like the emotion of what you're feeling in that moment.
The emotion, just talking.
Because I think most people can't, and I can't even, right? Because whatever anti-Semitism, and I've heard people say plenty of things who don't know, maybe because I've got lighter eyes, or maybe just because they don't give a crap, or who the hell knows, right? But but obviously people know that you're Black, so you every day, if you're running into racist people, you have to almost, maybe I don't feel comfortable here, I don't feel like, or you feel like people are judging you, or that is something I can't imagine.
But I think at the end of the day, it's just about, this is how it makes you feel. So like, say for example, was my husband's 50th birthday, and I'm planning this restaurant, going to a restaurant with him, and I'm so looking forward to it. And just
tell him it's all downhill. Like, I just had an elbow operation, and after 50 we're screwed. But go ahead.
But yeah,
that was supposed to be a joke. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No worries. So I'm excited about this. We get the kids. We're all excited. We go to the restaurant, and I get in there, and I say, Zuri Stevens, and the waitress just looks at me, because she never ever thought I was a Black person, because my name, and so immediately that the look. And then I asked about the table, and I've told them that I want a really nice table, but then she sort of seats me and my husband and kids right by the washroom. And so just the way you feel. And so that's the only way that I know how to convey those feelings. How do I feel about having organized something for 2 weeks and then finding myself just by the washroom? And then my kids sort of say, Mommy, don't be mad. Don't be mad. It's Dad's birthday. Let's just suck it up and just, that type of thing. So I think that's the best way to talk about these different experiences. There are other people that do it in a different way. But that's my personal way of sort of saying, this is how it feels, and using the empathy. And just circling back to what you said about Stephen Miller, Christian Nob, and all these people.
He's not Jewish. We don't accept him, by the way. He's not. He's out.
Yeah, but all those people were selected for one reason and one reason only. They have absolutely no empathy at all. At all of them across the board.
You mentioned the restaurant experience, and I'm flashing back to a couple of weeks ago where the kids and I and my wife, we went out to eat. And there was a time a couple of years ago when the kids were unruly, and we'd go into a restaurant and people recognize, oh, you got kids, we're going to put you over in the corner where you're not going to bother anybody. And somebody started to do that again. I said, no, my kids are well behaved. We can sit in the middle of the restaurant. That's okay. I'm like, oh, okay. But that's just as a parent. You mentioned the issue with your family and being sat by the washroom. What are some of the other sort of daily experiences that most white people wouldn't appreciate or understand that you deal with on a regular basis?
Just, sort of sit on the bus, and then a lady just next, because I just smile at people. That's just my thing. It's my secret superpower. And then she just clutches her bag. Or you're walking in a dark street, and you see somebody visibly stressed just because they look and see you behind them. So that type of thing, And I can't imagine what it is being a Black man, because I am a woman. So like, I think I get less heat. But like, being a Black man, my brother used to say, New York City past 10 o'clock at night, forget it. You're not going to get a taxi. That was way back, in the 80s and 90s. But
having lived there, then I would tell you that that's probably true.
Yeah.
And I would tell you, sadly, and that I saw the kind of behavior you're referring to many times, right? Where there were a group of us, and if anybody in our group was Black or was, they just were, people behaved differently.
Exactly.
People don't get it because New York has the reputation, and I think it's earned now. It has other issues with how corporate and ridiculous it's become, but I think it's become, more accepting, at least overall racially. But then, especially the 70s and 80s, and I was very young in the 70s, but the 80s I remember well. And this stuff was open. There still was open segregation. Most of my friends who I knew who were Black did not live anywhere near white folks, and most of my white friends didn't live anywhere near Black folks. So all that stuff was still going on, is what a lot of people don't get. Like, we're not far from it at all. Like,
exactly.
All these things.
We're actually not far from it, and I think we can go back there very, very fast. And that is what this administration is actually seeking to do. And we can go back like that. And some people think, no, we're in a post-racial society. We are definitely not in a post-racial society. And I think that's why it's important for all of us to fight together, because we can easily just reverse.
Yeah, I think they want to create the conditions for sort of de facto, like, even if it's not in the law and they don't even get in the law, but they create it so it's impossible, right? So for us to be in the same to be integrated the way we are. Go ahead, David. Sorry.
I was going to say, Zuri, you talk about your feelings when it's, the issue in the restaurant or somebody on a bus. How do you process those feelings both in the moment? Do you say things to the woman who clutches her purse, or do you just sort of ignore her? And then how do you process the feelings yourself?
Yeah, I think, you possibly couldn't even say something to her. So I personally just, it hurts, and I think I've grown a tougher skin over time. And sometimes you think about it for the rest of your day. But what I've learned to do is really just say, well, that's her problem. She has that problem. That tends to work. I think the more difficult part for me are when my kids tell me about racist experiences, for example. So my son is, just, got his bachelor's degree in business, and he's looking for a job. And so he tells me about these different experiences, like when they see, they call him up for an interview, and they're on the call and see that he is a mixed race child. So that, I think that is even more difficult for me to actually manage. I think myself now, I sort of just tend to sort of just forget it and say, well, this is just the way the world is. But it is difficult. I do see, though, with my son's generation, though, and that's the most scary part for me, doing the 2024 election, the campaign, we're seeing some rather young people that, that were MAGA, full force MAGA. And that was scary to me to see these, 20-year-olds that were speaking like Stephen Miller.
Well, they targeted young college educated white men on purpose with the whole manosphere crap, and they're not allowing you to be a man, and, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Now, I'll say, polling wise, up there with Latinas, and independents, those may be the three groups. I mean, they have absolutely plummeted among that group. It's not to defend that group. Yeah. They were idiots for voting for them, whoever did. And I've gotten to a point I can move past it and whatever, but I'm not going to actually offer my forgiveness to somebody who made that decision knowing what we knew. But at least in terms of electoral power, they've seen enough to understand that it's not what they thought it was.
I hope. I really do. I really do. Because I think when it comes to Trump, I think a lot of the African-American men and Latino men love the wealth that he has. They love that wealth.
He tapped into that cultural stuff too with them. Like, it was white college educated men, but you're right. Asian men voted at a higher proportion. There were very few groups of young men, not all ages, but young men that did not vote for Trump in a higher proportion than he did 2020. It might have made the difference, which is sad, honestly.
Well, I love, you talk about sort of empowering yourself to sort of realize that it's somebody else's problem, that you have the ability to control yourself and how you feel about a situation and say, okay, I'm not going to let that person influence how I feel about myself. I have the ability to control how I want to feel about myself in this situation. But it's sort of one thing on an intellectual level to sort of think, oh, yeah, I have that power. But when it happens to you over and over and over and over, it still must be challenging.
It is. It is. It's very challenging and it's tough. And I will say, total transparency, some days I sort of say, okay, I'm just going to have like a quiet at-home day, because I know that I'm safe in my home and that I'm not going to be exposed to any type of weird, racism. So it is hard. It is hard. But I think that if you let it control you, if you let every single ounce of racism control you, you basically don't have a life anymore, because that you're just going to be, because, then you sort of become controlled by other people's behavior.
They win, right? If
they win
enjoy your life,
they win in a way. And this is one of the reasons why I love Substack and I love all these opportunities to write, because I can do this. Nobody can stop me. While say 20 years ago, much more difficult, to get into a paper and be able to express myself. So hey, just deciding that, I'm going to live for me, and, I'm not ignore, because I can't fully ignore that stuff, but not let it control every single thing that I do. I think that's the most important thing. That's the lesson I've learned, at least.
That's great. Do you have plans going forward, like for what you think you may do with the Substack, like continue along the current line? I mean, you could always, you can add cultural things. You can add this, you can add that. Like, are you looking to write kind of about, you actually are already writing about cultural things, but you're looking to write about similar topics going forward? Any ideas you have on things you might tackle? Anything like that?
Yeah, I think I might get a podcast that I might add to that. I
Cool.
also wanted to maybe start a course, or something just to empower younger Black and brown women, and to empower them to use their voices and stuff like that. So I'd like to sort of get more people to contribute and to sort of speak. And I want to see news from different perspectives. So that's an area where I think I can also just maybe develop this a little bit more, get more people writing, expressing their opinion. The whole thing about Ilham Omar, I think there are going to be very few articles about that, because I don't think white men are going to write about that topic and how she must have felt in that moment. But there's this picture where her security guard is sort of protecting her from this person. And for me, as a Black woman, that image of her being protected really touched my heart, because that's something that is so difficult. I find myself having to protect myself all the time. And here, this big white guy just sort of protecting her is such a beautiful picture. And it's so sad that all of this has been co-opted by Trump into, she set it up, because that image is a really important image to see of a Black woman being protected. We don't see it as much as we should.
Yes, agreed. Well, just so you know, this is one white guy who actually, I am writing a piece that's going to involve a big part of what happened there. It's going to be a broader on ISIS white supremacy and their inheritance of it from the NRA and certain other stuff. But that, that kind of violent attitude and violent behavior towards particularly Black women, Black men, just in general, I think is an important part of all of this, because they've used, before it got to immigration, it was Black folks who were used as the scapegoats to try to unite, these far right groups who are white supremacists. So I think we can't forget that story. And this has reminded us, and people should also, obviously, I think they probably know, but Ilhan Omar is exactly who they've been attacking there. A Somali, Black woman in Minneapolis. It's exactly they've been demonizing exactly who she is. So this was predictable. And I think we do need to write about that, because they know what they're doing. And I'm tired of people sort of not connecting it. There's a term, stochastic terrorism. Everybody should learn what it means. You can't predict exactly what will happen and when and to who, but when people constantly are talking like this, you statistically can predict things will happen to people like her. So I think that's kind of important.
Yeah, exactly.
David.
Well, I'm just in awe, Zuri, not only because you write not only about race, but also sort of gender. And I would imagine that, it's, as you point out, it's challenging enough to be African-American in this society. It's also challenging to be a woman.
Yeah.
Right.
It definitely is. It really is difficult. I'm so tired of this image of this strong Black woman, which is always, sort of thrown in our faces. You can deal with this, you're a strong Black woman, and we're not, it's difficult. And we're vulnerable people, but we have to go out in the world with this armor, because if we didn't, our mental health. So, there's this image, even when Jasmine Crockett speaks, people are like, oh, she's a street persona. I think Vance said that, spreading all these stereotypes and rumors, but these are living human beings. There was this article I read today about Coco Gauff. She's at the Australian Open, and she, there was a moment when she lost her cool, and everybody was criticizing this, violent Black woman, but she was sort of saying, we have emotions too. We're vulnerable people too. We go through different moods like everybody else. So this image that, we are a certain way, it's just not a reflection of reality.
Well, they love that angry Black woman thing, because then they can just dismiss you out of hand, right? Yeah. Like they're taking away your humanity.
Yeah, and when Coco Gauff, an African-American tennis player, smashes her racket, I mean, there are a lot of women.
John McEnroe never did that shit, There are
a lot of women tennis players who have also smashed their racket or said things or yelled at an umpire, and you don't bat an eyelash.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's sort of like, if you think about, and again, it's not exactly the same because this was the beginning, but watch one of the ones, especially with what's his face, who passed away sadly. Who was played, Black Panther, but a movie on Jackie Robinson and the stuff that, he had to be better than perfect. Like these guys would spike him, N-word this, N-word that, spit on him, whatever. And he couldn't respond for the most part. No, I read what he did do is he would actually make sure he would slide extra hard into second and first and try to nail them. So that made me happy that he did the things he could do, but he knew that the public image had to be, because again, angry black guy, they would be calling him a savage and whatever. And they, and knew that if he lost his temper, all these other people that had been horrific to him, it wouldn't matter. Like then,
Exactly.
I can't imagine that kind of pressure. And I'm not saying it's that, because that was the first, but of course it's still everywhere to a certain degree.
Of course. I mean,
you'll be treated differently for losing your temper than I will.
Of course. And I think I wrote about it recently. That's one thing I never did in the corporate environment, no matter how enraged I was. And people were triggering me on purpose because all they wanted to see was me get angry. And then it would lead into something else. It would be like, she's aggressive and she, and I saw a lot of my friends go through this. So I was just always, I'd go into the ladies' room and have a good scream, but I just knew I couldn't lose my calm. I had to be always stoic. But yeah, and that's
Zuri. What would you say to your younger self, or what would you say to the 10, 11, 12-year-old girls, whether they're African American, a neurodivergent, whatever it is, they feel like they're different. What would you tell them in terms of life lessons, things that you didn't know back when you were that age, but that you've acquired in wisdom through your life?
I think the one thing, I was really fortunate because my mom taught me a lot about African Americans and Africans and Black people in the world and what they contributed to the world. So, and I think it's important to learn about that. I think that it's important to know that if you look at some of the media, the mainstream media, you will have a pretty low opinion of yourself. But you need to do that work and read about different cultures and civilizations and learn about the contributions that Black people have made to the world. So I think that's what I would say to myself as a young child. And I was a bookworm and I read a lot of books, but my mom and my grandmother just kept on telling me about my history and kept on telling me not just African American, but also about Africa. So it's just about knowing that you are as good a human being as everybody else on the planet and that you have the right to be in those rooms. I was in corporate, I was in some of the most important boardrooms in the world and feeling that I had the right to be in those rooms like everybody else. And just having that confidence, that self-confidence, I think is really, really important. So that's what I would tell my 10 or 11-year-old self. It's learn about your history, learn about the contributions that people like you that look like you made to the world, and know that, you are entitled to be in every single room that you ever step foot into.
I would argue you were much more entitled to be in that room than probably at least half the white guys there because they, were John Roberts, the whatever. Yeah, I picked that name on purpose, like the third or whatever. And, we're just there because of who daddy was or because of what school they got, that daddy got them into or, kind of like all the people in our government right now.
Being in those rooms, but not speaking too much, because if you came off as being more intelligent than they were, then they would do everything to get you.
So being that you are more intelligent than them, because I know you are, and what you've accomplished, would you ever think of running for office? Is that something that has interested you at all, or no?
I think that what I love to do is, there are a few things that I did when I was in college, when I studied comms, but I studied sociology and philosophy. And I have this passion with philosophy. I think that if I lived in the ancient Greek times, I would just love to sort of sit there and have conversations with Socrates, because I just love philosophy. So I like that part of things, getting people to think and to reflect. I have this passion with justice and goodness and just being good in the world, because I think that your time here should be spent doing good. And that's not a buzzword for me. That is something I really strongly believe. So maybe not running, but maybe just being that person that gets people to think,
Sure.
Philosophy, reflect, and how can we make this world just better than how we found it? That is the one thing that really drives me a lot. And if I can get time to finally finish my book, that would be great too.
And what are your kids? And you mentioned your kids. You got one who just graduated from college. And what do your kids think about your both your writing and you're putting yourself out there?
Yeah. So, in the beginning, it was like, okay, Mommy, do you really want to do this? And then, of course, what happened, I had some of my colleagues at work that read some of this stuff. So, of course, they didn't like what they read. And I was very afraid. I had a lot of fear because I had 2 kids to put through college, and I thought, oh my gosh, am I just sabotaging myself? Because, and in the end,
Can I ask you quickly before when did you leave the corporate environment?
So I sort of left in 2023, and then I was called back to do some work for an NGO in 2020 last year. And that didn't end extremely well because they told me to stop writing. They said, we saw your Substack, you need to stop writing. And I said, well, don't ask me to choose between the Substack and the job, And in the end, they were like, you just need to stop it. And I said, no. So I kept my Substack.
or I just don't. And
so I kept myself. I did drop. I was in Medium, and I did stop Medium because of a corporate job. They told me to stop, and I said, oh, okay, well, whatever. I stopped, and I really regretted that. And so I started back on Substack in 2023, and I said, no, I'm never going to stop this. But coming to your question about what they think, my daughter is incredible. She's studying to be a vet. And every single piece that I write, she sort of calls me and wants to have a conversation about it. And she says, a lot of the stuff you write helped me so much, just when Kamala was running for president, I had all the arguments. I had all the points because you made them so well in the articles. So I could really discuss everything with my friends.
That's
so
great.
I think they're really proud of the work that I do. And, that really just warms my heart because at the end of the day, a lot of what I do is also to talk about the things that they might face in their lives. So to answer your question, I think that they're pretty proud. And they say, when did you have time to even write that? But,
because I'm a superhero, 12 to 2 in the morning, and I start packing your lunches, and then I start, seriously, how old are they? Your children?
No, they're older now. So my son is 20. He's going to be 25 in a few days, and my daughter's 20. So they're older. But I started when they were like 5 years. 6 years ago. So, but they're proud of me and what I write, and I tell them it's going to be there forever. The internet is there forever. So you're always going to sort of,
So on that very point, Zuri, you and I are going to have a little contest here because I keep looking at Cliff's hat. And that little triangle thing keeps looking at me like it's on the $5 bill where it's like the pyramid with the eye that keeps staring off. And I keep thinking, okay, is Cliff a Freemason? What's going on here? So, Zuri, what's your guess about what that hat symbol is for Cliff? And then I'll give you
folks guess. Can jump in the comments and guess too. And it'll be interesting to see if anybody knows it. But go ahead.
I have no idea. Well, it looks like for me, it looks like a mountain. It looks like the tip of a mountain.
Yeah,
that's a good guess. I was going to say a pyramid of some kind, like Cliff. Have you been to the pyramids lately? But so I think the mountain is probably a better guess. So, Cliff, what is the answer? What is that thing?
So first of all, I like the Freemason part. That would be so cool if I was like it's national treasure. I'm going on a hunt right now for all the old gold from Benjamin Franklin. And I'm not going to give any to Donald Trump. I'm going to hold the gold. Okay. It's not going to be anything as exciting that I promise you. But as people here know, I love rock and roll. I do love rock bands. Wow. I love all sorts of music. And this is a hat that is the symbol of Linkin Park, the band, because I went to see them with my older son. My older son is a singer and a drummer and in a rock band and loves. We both like Linkin Park a lot. Which, by the way, is a great, diverse and mixed band that combines like true rock and roll and some hip hop and they're fascinating, and I really like them. So yeah, I'm sorry, it's nothing that's more, more that's higher level. Like I'm on the Trilateral Commission, but
I just had to ask. I just looking at thinking, what is that? What is it? All right, so Zuri, where can everybody find you? Your Substack, website? Give us all the vitals of where people can see your stuff.
It's only on Substack, so it's We Need a Black Woman in Charge. If you type that in, you'll find me, or Diary of a Black Woman in a White World. You'll find me, and both on those two blogs. That's where you'll find.
And then, are you also on Blue Sky or X or any of those other?
Yeah, I'm in Blue Sky, but I'm really bad about that because I don't even remember what my handle is. I don't use it that much. But if anybody wants to reach me, it's really Substack on my messages. They can send me a message. I'm always on there, and I will respond to every single message that's sent my way. I definitely will.
That's right. Linkin Park hat is on the way.
That's right. That's right. Everybody needs a Linkin Park hat. I don't know. They're touring still, I think, but I'm not sure.
They are?
Yeah. But yeah, they are. But I can send you, we can send you, if you're interested, a BAM hat for Bland Media. Like, yes. We've got those,
Yes.
We'll start sharing all that with people soon enough. And
Okay.
thank you for the super chat, Uncle Fatty, which is a great name, by the way. In the end, does it really even matter? There's a man who knows his Lincoln Park. Thank you, my friend. And of course, he made it 420, which I don't know what that means. Some kids, I've heard them talk about it or something. But
Hey, Zuri, thanks for putting up with our nonsense. And again,
no, thank you so much. It's just been great having this conversation with you. It's been wonderful. It's been
and on a serious note, we really do, appreciate and salute your courage and putting yourself out there and the writing you've done. It's really remarkable. We encourage everybody to go read your stuff. It'll make you think, which is part of what we're all about. So,
and I want to say, I think if people, can understand, and this to me is a key problem with conservatism, is a lack of being able to understand what it's like to be in somebody else's skin, what it's like to go through life, as somebody who doesn't have everything sort of in front of you that's easy. And I think if more of us can, think in a way of how would that have been different had I been A, B, C, or D, I think we'll all be better for it. Yeah. So, that's how we come to understand each other and appreciate and have empathy. So keep doing it, keep writing, not that you need me to tell you that. I'm just, you don't listen to some white guy like me. Do it because you're going to do it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I am definitely listening to you. I'm definitely.
No, but your work's terrific, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate your being here. So thank you so much.
Thanks for the opportunity. It was great having this chat, therapeutic as well, just to talk about how I feel about certain things. So I really appreciate it, and thanks for standing up, and thanks for just being these examples of people that stand up and that give me a voice and give me an opportunity, a platform to talk about my work. It really means a lot to me.
Absolutely.
I think all of it is going to be very important over the next year to all of us, because we need everybody on board here to head to a better place in the future. So thank you.
Hey, Cliff, good show, buddy. Well done.
Thank you.
Well, thank you both. I don't, thankfully for once, I don't think any bad stories I'm aware of broke during our show. So maybe we should try to get out of here quickly. Zuri Stevens, thank you for being a guest. David Shuster.
Thanks, David.
Absolutely. David Shuster, former MSNBC host, now doing it, doing the independent thing with us here. Thank you for being a part of all this. And my friends, as the sun sets slowly in the west and I find the thing I need to click on, we bid you a fond farewell. Take care, guys.
Thank you. Bye.